So these are the basic modules that I went over. So these are the 3 voltage controlled modules that create the sound and shape the sound. And then these are the modulation sources. So sending CV or control voltage out to these guys. So any of these, you could patch into any of these to modulate them, like I was showing you with vibrato and tremolo. So the thing that can be a little confusing, you know these modules, you kind of understand what they do, but you go into a store or look online or wherever and you see a modular synthesis and there's knobs and jacks everywhere and it can be a little confusing. And every manufacturer lays out stuff differently. There's no standard as far as where stuff is laid out. Usually there's a standard within a manufacturer. For example, Roland has the modulation inputs at the bottom and the outputs or sound inputs at the top. But it can be a little confusing. So what I've done here is I've split them up and just outlined all of them. So it's the same modules I was showing you before. All these same modules that are here are in here, but they're just arranged a little differently. So here's 2 VCOs, 2 VCFs, 2 envelope generators, LFO in between, and then you have your 2 VCAs there. So all those basic modules are here in the first 4 modules. Just ignore the last one, that's effects. But the basic ones are right there. So what I'm going to do, because the best way to learn this stuff is patching it, I'm going to start by just walking you through a basic patch that will patch up a simple subtractive synth sound, just so you get an idea of following the signal flow. And just unplug everything here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the CV out from the keyboard and patch it into the pitch modulation in on my VCO. So if I go back to this diagram, you can see my CV in for the VCOs right down on the bottom there. There it is. That's the same module we were just looking at, and there's the one that I labeled. So here's my cable. That is the CV in. Oh, sorry, CV out from my keyboard. I'm going to plug it into CV in on the modular synth. And then the next one here is the gate signal. I want to make sure that's coming out of the keyboard and going over to the envelope generator. So again, I've got it labeled here. My gate signals, that's it right there. That's where it needs to go in. And again, that's just kind of learning the modules to know where all the jacks are, but I'm going to, this cable here is the output from the keyboard, sending the gate. And I'm just going to jack it right into there. That's the envelope generator that I just plugged the gate signal into. Okay. Yeah.
I see.
So now we have the keyboard controlling, sending the signal to the envelope, sending the pitch to the oscillator. Now we have to start to send the sound through the synth as well. So I'm going to start with the oscillator. That's what makes the sound, and send it out to the filter. So again, on my modules here, there's a saw wave out going into the filter on top. And here I'll color code it for you, just that it's easy to follow. So there's out going into the filter. And then the next one, I want to modulate that filter, so have it open and close automatically. So now I'm going to use that envelope generator. I'm going to take its output voltage and send it into the modulation input on the filter. And you see that's right here. So there's an output from the envelope going into one of the modulation inputs on the filter. So that's the envelope right there, going over to the filter input. And now the envelope is controlling the filter. And so that you can hear kind of where we're at, I'll get a sequence playing. And just patch the sound into the filter there. So we're controlling the pitch, sending it into the filter. Now I can tweak the envelope to open and close that filter for me. There we go. Now you can hear that filter opening and closing every time a key is pressed. I'm not actually pressing the key, just the sequence is playing, doing it for me, but same sort of idea. And then the next thing is coming out of the filter, I'm going to go into the VCA so that we have some level volume control on there. So there's the output going over to the input on the VCA. Oh, and I messed up my color coding. Let me fix that, just so that it's easy to follow with the presentation. There we go. So there's the output from the filter, and the input on the VCA is right here. And this jack here is going to my mixer. So I just want to take the output from the VCA, send it to my mixer. And right now, I have to turn this volume knob, which I don't want to have to do by hand. So what we're going to do instead is add modulation. So the last wire here, coming out of the envelope, there's two outputs on this envelope, so I'll just use the same one and patch into the VCA. So here it is on the synth, second envelope coming out into the modulation input on the VCA. So right there, and then coming out and going to modulation input, turn up that modulation, and you can adjust the initial volume to make sure it's where you want it, and that's it. Now I have the volume being controlled automatically. So that's it. That kind of runs through the basic patching and just kind of gets you an idea of how you follow the signal flow. So it's coming out of the oscillator into the filter, which is being modulated by an envelope. Coming out of the filter, going into a VCA. The VCA is being modulated by the same envelope. And then the sound coming out and going to the speakers. So that's it. Are there any other questions about anything I discussed or modular synthesis in general? Yeah?
Is there a loop mechanism, or is it connected to directly the sequencer?
Right now it's the sequencer that's playing. Yeah.
And it doesn't sequence by itself?
No. You have to send voltages and gate signals to it. Yeah. There are some sequencer modules, but they will basically do the same thing that this keyboard is doing for me right now. Yeah. Yeah?
This is all hardware. You don't need a computer software.
No. There's some stuff, the modules on the bottom here, there's some integration with software. You can reconfigure how this middle row works, and you can load in different patches and different synth profiles in this bottom one down here. But for the most part, modular synthesis, it's all hardware, all patching with cables. This top row is completely analog. You have to use cables and patch everything together on there. Yeah, it's being used more and more in common music, especially now with a lot of popular music and EDM and stuff. Has a lot of weird bit crush, distorted sounds in it and stuff. And you can do a lot of that in modular synthesis very easily. So it's becoming more and more popular, especially for people trying to get a unique sound. Yeah?
I would assume there are plugins for this, right? Other than having to get the hardware?
There is some software as well. There's some. Yes, there's something to be said. The thing with software is it's twofold. One, you're limited by that manufacturer's vision of what they're doing. Like I said, one of the advantages of a modular synth is that a bunch of different modules from different manufacturers. As much as I want everyone to only buy Roland all the time, it's limiting your sound palette if that's all you do. And with software, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be limited into that one application. Whereas this is like having a bunch of different applications that can all interact with each other. Okay, we have a bit of time left. So like I said, the best way to learn this stuff is to patch it. And the previous patch that you guys heard when you came in was another student from the first seminar. So feel free to come on up and just start patching it away. I'll spin it around here so it's a little easier to access. But come up, start patching, ask if any questions if you have them.